Hi, Mauricio. Thank you very much for the interest in the team and the opportunity to explain everything we are doing in ESG and impact investing in Brazil and elsewhere. So thank you very much for the opportunity. It's a pleasure.
Rudy, ESG principles may be misunderstood as a generic or trendy concept that nowadays companies want to be part of. In that sense, what is BTG's ESG agenda? Can you highlight some ESG accomplishments achieved in the last year?
Just to explain you how we started the area at the bank. Back to 2015, I was already thinking about to create the ESG department. And what came through in Brazil that helped a lot, that we speed up the process, was Brazil central bank legislation, establishing that banks in Brazil from that moment on would be obliged to do a risk assessment on social and environmental issues in respect to extending finance loans granted to clients and counterparties when that transaction would imply in environmental risks, for instance. Then hire the first environmental engineer, Beatriz, and a second one, Rafaela, and we started to do risk assessment, basically. And that started with, as I said, risk assessment. And after that, we started to do other stuff. First of all, we start to already going to the explanation in what is BTG ESG agenda, and I will also highlight ESG accomplishment achieved in the last year. Okay. Okay. As I said, basically, we we have four areas at the ESG department that we cover. First of all, we are part of the credit extension network or framework local. So any transaction that imply once we grant credit a loan that would imply any type of environmental risk and social risk is much more environmental. We access that. We check that all the environmental aspects of, for instance, uh, greenfield uh, plant in energy plant. We check a real estate project. We also check. So this is the first pillar of the area. Second one uh, is what we call eco efficiency. So we look at all the activities of the premises that we have, and we may suggest any type of transformation, engineering, architecture speaking, that would represent energy saving, for instance. And I have innumerous examples of that. Uh, Also, we look at all the projects that is the bank is engaged in terms of participations in areas, and we look all the environmental risks. We do assessments and we monitoring that. For instance, as you know, one of the arms of the bank has extensive activities in timber, commercial plantations, forests, by using the wood for several activities. We own the group BTG through timber own billions, I think almost $4 billion in assets in Brazil, in Paraguay, in Uruguay, in the US mainly. And we do basically owned by investment funds that we managed. And we manage those resources, and we monitoring also, we certify to be sure all the timber activity is compliant with all the environmental requirements in each location where the plantations, the commercial forests, and the properties are located. This is another activity. We used to have, for instance, agricultural activities. We check that. We have real estate activity extensively. Once real estate implies a commercial real estate activity that we'll do in a greenfield area, in a new area also, we check licenses, environmental license, and everything. So this is the monitoring of all the activities that we have. Uh, Also, we do integration of ESG in investment funds that we have in the asset management. Basically, we have funds now settled for complying, for invest only in companies that has achieved certain standard in terms of ESG. We, together with normally a third party consultant, we monitor that. We create the policies for the fund and also how that's going to be monitored that the portfolio be comprised by ESG standard, high standard companies, for instance. The fourth pillar of the area was transferred effectively to the impact investing department or area that is also kind of a sister area. We work together, as I said, I'm a co-heads together with Mariana of both. Basically, we combine at impact investing two issues: returns with positive impact in the environmental. Give you an example, we are launching already, started last year, uh, finished the period of capital raising June, the first private equity fund totally dedicated to impact investing. Basically, we will raise 500 million to a billion reais, and we're going to invest in projects that positively will impact environmental and social issues. I give you an example of that. We are looking at a company that recycle plastic. Brazil only recycle 2% of all plastic that consumes. Over in other places in the world, that can be 10%. In Germany, 20%, or US 30% in certain states. So basically, it's one example of what we're going to do in this fund. Also, we are monitoring investment banking in launching and helping clients to launching what we call green or sustainable bonds. So debt issuance, where the use of proceeds will be dedicated use to really enhance the operations of the issuer in respect to a environmental issue, for instance.
Rudy, how do ESG criteria impact investment decisions and portfolio construction? What is the state of the art today? And what are the differences you can see between developed and emerging markets?
This is a very good question. Well, um, the integration of ESG principles, where basically in portfolios constructions, in the investment making decision, is something very new in Brazil, very new. First of all, because in Brazil, and I would say in emerging markets, by the way, first of all, the last 5 years was almost no activity in terms of, except for large companies that has already a linked with environmental issue. I give an example, for instance, Natura. Natura is a cosmetic Brazilian company listed in the stock exchange that create this brand based on the respect to the nature. Well, there is clear that ESG criteria and high standard are implied and composed the strategy of the company. But if you look at the other companies in Brazil, listed and unlisted, this is very new. And it's only now that we are looking at investment decision makers looking at the aspects. For instance, from now on, we are inserting in our research material about listed companies a paragraph or a section in ESG. So how the company approach ESG in a way that the buy side and the sell side, internal and external, base their decision in that. So yes, we are producing research in respect to the various companies and sectors that we cover, indicating who are the companies most compliant and most modern in terms of ESG criterias, basically. Uh, it's good to say, it's worth mentioning once you asking about accomplishments. Last year we launched a ETF, exchangeable trade fund. It's basically an investment fund who acquires only companies that belongs to a Standard and Poor Dow Jones indexes that categorize and summarized and composed by companies with high ESG standards. So basically, investors can invest in this ETF fund, which will be comprised by companies uh, which are really with principles in place. By the way, BTG Pactual last year, uh, result of a massive effort of ourselves, become part of the easy sustainable index of the Brazilian Stock Exchange. It's only composed by 40 companies, so it's very difficult to get into. To get in, someone need to get out, and we get in last year. So we are really now part of a very selected group. So once investor look at BTG Pactual as a safe harbor for investing, they know that we are easy indexes and we have this kind of stamp. So answer the question, portfolio makers, portfolio managers are only now starting to look at those aspects the last year or two, and we are producing products. This fund, we have another fund, infrastructure fund, composed by also companies and projects of only renewable energy and all that stuff. So state of the art today is Europe and the US. Basically, they have a lot. With this new government, Biden now overcoming Trump, things will get even better in the US. But in Europe, especially in the Nordic countries and in Germany, in France, so ESG aspects are really taken into consideration by portfolio managers day after day. So this is a reality.
In your experience, once investors decide to invest in ESG, would you say that it is usual for them to allocate part of their investment to ESG products? Or should this approach even be considered as a filter to start considering investing in new products?
Well, question is that uh, with the pandemic times, everyone start to look much more to the world, to the nature, what nature is saying, how nature is speaking, all those aspects. So stay at home, stay really reflecting about life has result that really investors are paying attention to that. We deal here in Brazil, as you do in Chile also, we deal a lot with what we call the second generation. Are the sons of the families, the guys that will be the new ones once their fathers pass away, when the executives of the main companies leave, the new generation that will take places either as executive in main companies or will inherit money, wealth management from the wealthy from their parents. That second generation are really have really a different mindset. They come to the bank, they knock our doors, looking at what type of ESG products that they have. What are sustainable products that you have that we can combine nice results with uh, nice impacting movements? And we here realize, and this is the impact investing world is very close is ESG, but ESG way of doing investments. We realize that if you combine returns equal or equal or better than typical market returns with positive events in environmental projects, for instance, yes, you have already people interested in investing that. So we issued last year the first debenture local debt of company sustainable. That part of the proceeds would be used for education purpose in a poor community near to this near energy power plant. Is an example. So investors really still they are not totally familiar with that. So it's a process, long-term process. But yes, if you start to combine products with the two words returns and positive impact, you're going to reach a lot of deep pockets. And that's what we are doing once we created the impact investing area, which is responsible for sustainable products. And yes, if you present products and they are good, they are looking at new products, either equity products, so this fund that we launched, private equity fund, liquid or illiquid investing, debt, and everything that can combine both worlds are really of the attention of the investor worldwide. Presently, we say that investments in ESG products worldwide is more than $1 trillion. Only in the US is $500 billion. So it's a lot. So money is flowing from the traditional world, investment world, to this new one. Okay.
What are the main challenges investors or companies starting embracing the ESG practices surely will be facing? What are the key pieces of advice you can provide to them?
First of all, we have to pay attention by answer this question is that that will take time. And typical companies, they need to change their mindset and they need to know that they need to exchange results and compromise budget to really start to put in practice the best ESG rules in place. And that takes time. Certain companies are doing a lot to catch up. This is for sure. Companies that don't are looking at this way. It doesn't matter what your activity. In a typical bank, clients are really willing to say that banks are changing a little bit of their spreads for environmental and social engagement. If you take the COVID-19, where BTG Pactual allocated 50 million reais for the cause, has caused a lot of goodwill for the group. And this is one of the examples that change the mentality and then attract talent, attract people interested in working with you, and a lot of stuff. Diversity, for instance, in the social and governance is also important. We have several projects in Brazil in terms of diversity. We can once discuss if you want. But I think the main challenge here that companies are embracing is that they really need to seriously think about what they can do in terms of the local communities, the environmental, and how they can position themselves in a company with ESG practice. For instance, have women in the board, have minorities working, being hired, all those aspects, transparency, how you present and produce results, and anything you inform the market, how your premise are constitute to really respect environmental, what type of activities you have that you would kind of motivated people to do voluntary work. So a series of issues, once they are in place, that shows that the company is not only look at profits, but are look at the environmental, at social aspects, and came to the conclusion that uh, public sector in third world, in emerging markets, and we are very fertile territory for that. We have a bunch of problems here. Public sector is not has not enough energy and money to settle and face all these social and environmental problems. And society clients of all the companies, consumer, when they buy your yogurt, your product in the supermarket, they really want to know what we're doing for the environmental because they are checking that and they are searching. So this is something that's going to be enhanced and growing more. And we as a bank, we have already, realized that how important is that. So we place ourselves in a very good position so far. There's a lots to do. For instance, net your emissions, your carbon emissions is fantastic. In the bank, we are netting already scope 1, 2, and 3. So all the emissions that we have, we are netting by buying carbon credits, for instance, or by buying or supporting projects that will represent reforestation, for instance. So really is insert in the company ESG principles. And by the way, we are receiving from companies in Brazil calls to help them how they can transform their companies and their goals by integrating ESG practice in their activities. We do a lot of consultants work on that also. So the advice would be, first of all, analyze the sector, analyze itself, all the lines of the company, how exactly they are, company is acting, and then start to see how you can implement, first of all, risk assessment in your activity, risk assessment in respect to third parties, suppliers. Secondly, how you can do your activity in a better way, considering ESG principles, eco efficiency, uh, what you burn in terms of energy, water, and so on, what you can do to have a better environmental world by acting as a company. Also, you can adhere to treaties and multilateral agreements in which you compromise yourself to certain agreements. You have the principle for responsible investment, the carbon disclosure project, uh, also the ONU's principle, United Nations principles, the ODS, as the development sustainable goals of the United Nations, also 17 goals. You can also insert in your company. So basically, you have there things like help the planet, help the groups, minorities, and so on. Better work conditions. So basically, you need to drive your company to look at those principles, to start to get familiar with that, to adhere to those agreements. And finally, to combine positive effects of the product that you offer to social and environmental issues. Depending on the company, this is more challenge, but there's way of doing. It doesn't matter your sector, you can do it.
Okay, well, many thanks for your time and for the call.
Okay, great. Mauricio, I also thank you very much. I like very much to cover all those issues and to explain exactly what we are doing so far. Great opportunity. And I'm very open to discuss that in future opportunities with anyone, your team, and any group. Thank you very much and have a great day.